A wealthy young couple hires a silent and mysterious nanny for their infant son, a reborn doll. Inexplicable occurrences happen as soon as the woman steps in to care for the child, so the father must uncover the truth about the nanny's origins before it's too late. Leanne Grayson, a newly hired nanny, arrives late at night at a posh townhouse in the middle of a downpour. At the front door, she is greeted by Dorothy and Sean Turner, a wealthy young couple. While Sean takes Leanne's suitcases to her room, Dorothy gives the meek woman a tour of their home. She then leaves the nanny in her room to give her time to settle in. In the kitchen, Sean comments that he finds Leanne too quiet and odd, but Dorothy dismisses his offhand remarks. Later during dinner, the couple asks Leanne questions to get to know her better. Sean shares that he is a consulting chef, so he stays home most of the time. Dorothy hopes Leanne will feel at home and that she'll easily be able to bond with her child Jericho. Dorothy attempts to give her a toast, but Leanne declines as she is below the legal drinking age. Sean insists, but his wife refuses and tells Leanne to call home instead to inform her family in Wisconsin that she'd arrived safely. Later, the couple argues about Sean's lack of sensitivity when Leanne interrupts them. She informs them she's going to bed, and Dorothy points out she can ask them for anything, so Leanne thanks them and leaves. Downstairs, Sean takes some water bottles from the fridge. As he passes by Leanne's room, he sees her praying fervently and becomes unsettled. He leaves her a bottle by her bedroom door before heading to the nursery. In the nursery, Sean checks on the baby, Jericho, who is just a doll. As he stares at it solemnly, Sean begins to cry. The following day, Leanne cares for the doll as if it's alive. The couple argues in the kitchen because Dorothy feels uneasy about leaving Jericho in the house for the first time in a long time. Sean comments she's not fit for work at the moment, but his wife feels she needs to return to work anyway. When Leanne enters the kitchen, Dorothy hands Jericho to her and rushes out of the house. After Dorothy leaves, Sean informs Leanne that Jericho is a reborn doll and they lost their real son when he was 13 weeks old. His wife took it hard and suffered catatonia and a psychotic breakdown. An unlicensed therapist suggested the doll as a coping mechanism, which Dorothy fervently follows. Sean divulges that they haven't publicly announced Jericho's death, and only Dorothy's father and brother know the truth. And since Dorothy has paid Leanne an entire month's salary, he suggests she should have fun in the city instead of pretending to care for a fake baby. However, Leanne seems to not be surprised at all by what Sean said, and informs him she'll be taking Jericho out for a walk, unsettling him. As soon as she leaves, Sean rummages through her belongings. As he goes through the drawers, he gets pricked by a straw cross hidden amongst her clothes. After their walk, Leanne cooks a meal for herself. Sean tells her it's unnecessary, but she continues with the dish. However, he insists, so Leanne leaves and eats in her room. Later that night, Dorothy returns and finds Sean waiting at the dining table. She asks him about Jericho, and he says the baby's asleep. Dorothy is disappointed that Leanne didn't keep him awake, but a weary Sean just pours her a drink. Afterward, as Sean cleans up, he notices a spoon blocking the garbage disposal. He sees Leanne's dirty dishes and gets irritated. Sean goes to the nursery to admonish her, but instead, he finds the straw cross hanging by the window. Sean speaks to Dorothy and tells her he's bothered by Leanne's religiousness. He asserts he doesn't want to see Leanne openly practicing in the house because he's afraid it may influence his wife. However, this only exasperates Dorothy, and she argues that they need her. The next day, Dorothy's brother, Julian Pierce, visits Sean at the house. Julian is infuriated with how Dorothy pushes things too far by hiring Leanne, but Sean defends his wife, believing she needs time to cope. However, Julian argues she needs professional help because they can't keep this act up forever. Later, Sean and Dorothy bring Jericho to town, leaving Leanne alone in their house. She explores Dorothy's dresser, checks the titles of her news coverage DVDs, and takes a bath in her tub. The couple returns home, and Dorothy hands Jericho to her husband, who instantly throws it on the floor the minute she goes to the bathroom. However, Sean notices Leanne watching him from the top of the stairs. Unnerved, he immediately picks the doll back up and starts cradling it. Later that night, Leanne hears Dorothy groaning in the other room. She finds Dorothy in the bathtub in pain from mastitis. Leanne offers to help and drops down to her knees and massages Dorothy's chest to relieve the blockage. Dorothy is surprised by her actions, and after a while, she admits that she's afraid of putting Jericho on formula. However, Leanne tells her to persevere and finally manages to unblock the milk. Relieved and thankful, Dorothy cries while holding the nanny's arm. The next day, Leanne asks Sean to watch Jericho while she runs some errands for Dorothy. An exasperated Sean Sean doesn't listen and continues to work instead. She goes to the kitchen, places the baby monitor near him, and leaves. Later, Sean is in the wine cellar when he hears a baby crying. He pauses and listens, but the cry has stopped. Sean returns to the kitchen to continue working when he suddenly hears a baby gurgle through the baby monitor. Sean immediately goes to the nursery and is stunned to discover that a real baby has replaced the doll. Later that night, Dorothy arrives home, but to Sean's surprise, his wife isn't shocked to find the baby and continues to act as if nothing has happened. A horrified Sean goes to Leanne in the kitchen to ask her whose baby it is, but she calmly insists that it's Jericho. His wife then enters the kitchen and asks Leanne to bathe the infant, to which she obliges. At dinner, Sean is still in shock, so he asks Dorothy where she found Leanne, but she's vague in her answer, finding the conversation unserious. Later, Dorothy applies a cream on her stretch marks in the bathroom. She hears a noise, but quickly ignores it. Meanwhile, Sean tries to call Julian, but it goes to voicemail. He then goes to the nursery, takes the straw cross off the curtain, and stuffs it down the kitchen garbage disposal. Afterward, he goes to their room to turn off the baby monitor. Sean then takes the baby and attempts to go out, but the passcode to their front door has changed, and it sets off the alarm. The loud noise wakes Dorothy, so Sean lies that he was bringing Jericho along for a drive. Leanne also descends the stairs to ask what happened, but an annoyed Dorothy takes the baby and goes back up the stairs. Leanne then lingers for a moment, staring at Sean before returning to her room. The following day, Sean tries to talk to his wife, but she's in a hurry to go to work. He then sees Leanne carrying Jericho and tells him she'll take the baby out of his way. While walking towards the kitchen, Sean steps on a splinter. As he tries to get the wooden fragment out, Julian calls to ask him about dinner, but Sean insists that he come straight to the house. After ending the call, he manages to pull the splinter out. Moments later, Sean shuffles through the resumes and discovers that Leanne only sent a handwritten letter in her application. He notices blood on the sheet and realizes it's his. Later that day, Leanne returns to find Sean sanding the floor. She brings Jericho back into the nursery and notices the cross has disappeared. Meanwhile, Julian arrives and is shocked to see a real baby in the crib. The two men quickly convene in the kitchen, where Julian demands answers. Sean tries to explain what happened, but Julian doesn't believe it, as Dorothy could have snatched the baby. He then tells Sean that they have to search for his parents and instructs Sean not to do anything without him. Later, Leanne watches Dorothy covering the news with Jericho in her lap. Dorothy arrives and is horrified to find the crib empty. However, Leanne enters the nursery with Jericho, informing her she kept him awake, and hands him over to the mother. Sean inspects his buttocks in the bathroom for splinters when his wife walks in on him. She decides to help him remove it, and while picking it off one by one, she shares her happiness about hiring Leanne. However, Sean doesn't trust her, and they argue. Moments later, Dorothy suggests they make love, but he refuses, as they haven't done it for almost a year, leaving her disappointed. Meanwhile, Leanne makes another straw cross. Later that evening, Julian arrives, and Dorothy greets him with a happy birthday. Julian asks for red wine, and Sean leads him to the cellar, where they talk privately. Julian informs him that his contact reported no white male babies currently missing in the area. Sean becomes frustrated because he doesn't want the infant in their house anymore. Julian then tells him to consider keeping the baby because it might be better for his sister's mental well-being. They return to the kitchen, where the siblings catch up. Julian then questions her about Leanne, and if she searched her profile carefully. Exasperated, she tells him she has faith in the nanny because Jericho trusts her. However, Julian doesn't buy her explanation. He then asks that Leanne join their dinner party. Dorothy is delighted and goes up to fetch her. Sean thinks it's a bad idea, but Julian is steadfast in interrogating the mysterious woman. Dorothy goes to Leanne's room and asks if she wants to hang out with them. Leanne accepts the invitation and goes downstairs wearing one of Dorothy's dresses. Dorothy then introduces her to Julian, who greets the lady with a kiss on the hand. They later have a toast, and Leanne only agrees to drink for this occasion. As they eat, Sean comments he finds the food tasteless and tries to season it with salt. Julian attempts to make conversation with Leanne, but Sean keeps on coughing. He then interrupts them, saying he can't taste anything, and excuses himself. He goes to the bathroom and attempts to cough out something from his throat, before finally pulling out a large splinter. Dorothy heads to the kitchen and tries to retrieve the cake from the fridge, when she suddenly freezes, unblinking. Sean comes in furious and blames her for being careless with her cooking, deducing the splinter fell off the wooden ladle she used. He turns to look at her and notices she stopped moving. Julian enters the kitchen, sees his sister, and is about to call the paramedics when Sean stops him. Sean then asks his wife if she recalls what happened to Jericho. Dorothy is on the verge of remembering, but snaps out of it when she hears the baby crying. As though nothing strange has happened, she runs to Jericho, leaving the two men befuddled. Dorothy goes into the nursery to comfort Jericho, and a new straw cross is hanging by his crib. As she cradles him, she senses something is wrong but ignores it. At midnight, Sean receives a text from Julian to meet him outside. His brother-in-law introduces him to Roscoe, a part-time private investigator who confirms that Leanne is from Wisconsin. Julian then divulges that they're flying there to investigate further and instructs Sean to stay with Dorothy at all times because he doesn't trust the nanny. Roscoe then asks Sean for Leanne's picture so they can use it for their investigation. Sean returns to the apartment to get her resume picture, but it's missing. He goes to her room, takes a photo of her sleeping instead, and sends it to Julian. The following day, Sean is cooking for an event. Toby, his commie chef, assists him as his sense of taste hasn't returned yet. Dorothy, Leanne, and Jericho enter the kitchen to have breakfast. Sean comes in with a box of eels and asks Toby to help him gut them. As they proceed to peel the eel while it squirms, Leanne starts to panic and faints. When she wakes, Leanne finds Dorothy by her side, who says she must have fainted because she's still unaccustomed to their ways. But Leanne assures her that she's happy. Dorothy is delighted with her response and is excited to become best friends. In the kitchen, Sean receives a call from Julian, who informs him that he and Roscoe have arrived in Wisconsin. Dorothy appears and informs her husband that she and the nanny will be going into town. She then admonishes him in front of Leanne for terrifying the nanny with the eel, so Sean is forced to apologize. Dorothy then leaves Jericho with him. Moments later, Julian video calls to inform him they discovered an abandoned burned-down house at the address Leanne wrote in her letter. While exploring the place, Sean is horrified to see a straw cross, similar to the one above Jericho's crib, hanging on the burned wall. The two women return from shopping, and Leanne goes to the nursery to check on the baby, leaving the couple alone. Sean asks his wife for more details about the nanny, but Dorothy says she's very tight-lipped. She then assures her husband she'll inform him of any gossip she can get from her. Hours later, Sean and Toby are done with the food prep and are cleaning up. One eel still slithers in the sink, so Toby asks his boss what to do with it. Sean tells him to use it for practice, but Toby thinks it's wasteful to do so. Before handing the commie chef his pay, Sean says he'll add $100 for him to stay and keep an eye on the house while they're gone. Meanwhile, the two women hang out in the master bedroom. Dorothy tries to procure information from her, but Leanne keeps mum. She then notices her caressing one of her shoes, so she tells Leanne that she can borrow any of her clothes, but Leanne instead lets Dorothy borrow her new heels for the night. Later, Leanne watches the couple share a tender moment before they leave for dinner. Later that evening, Toby is cleaning up the basement when he hears music playing upstairs. In the master bedroom, Leanne sits in front of Dorothy's dresser, trying on her makeup and jewelry. She then goes downstairs and spots Toby, whom she invites for a drink. Leanne tells him to get a bottle of red wine from the cellar. Moments later, they try to make small talk. When Leanne gets hungry, Toby offers to cook for her, but as he's checking the fridge for ingredients, the woman suddenly slams the eel on the counter, surprising him. While Toby prepares the meal for them, they hear a knock on the door. Toby sees Julian, who's just arrived from Wisconsin. Julian tells him to leave and closes the door in his face. Julian sees Leanne in the kitchen and offers her a better choice of wine. Minutes later, Julian threatens Leanne to leave his sister alone, but Leanne replies by asking if he was there the night Jericho died. Julian is rendered speechless by her question and leaves the table. However, Leanne follows, touches him suggestively, and tells him it's okay. She stops her advances when she hears the couple arrive. Dorothy goes upstairs to comfort Jericho, and Leanne follows her. Right before she leaves, she smiles at Julian, disturbing him. Upstairs, Dorothy cradles Jericho while Leanne goes to the master bedroom to return Dorothy's ring. Concurrently, Julian and Sean convene in the greenhouse. His brother-in-law shows him a video of the Grayson family's headstones in a cemetery, including one that has Leanne's name on it. Julian believes the woman in their house stole the real Leanne Grayson's identity. Meanwhile, Dorothy goes to Leanne's room to return the borrowed heels and tucks her in bed. Julian and Sean continue their conversation outside the front door. Julian believes Leanne is trying to extort money from them. He then tells Sean they're at risk of danger the longer Leanne stays in their home. He then departs, leaving a bothered Sean. Sean goes back upstairs and hears Jericho crying from the nursery. He goes to the child to comfort him and cradle him in his arms.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.